You know, the truth is I'm a girl that came from absolutely nothing. You know, I did not have a family that, you know, had a bankroll for me that I could go out and I could spend their money. I grew up in a small roach-infested apartment with me and my 2 sisters. That's the truth of my situation and where I came from. You'll never find that on the internet because it's not interesting. They try to whitewash me. They say, oh, she's from Connecticut, so she must be wealthy. They don't know that there's poor places everywhere in the entire nation, right? I tell people, and just some fun facts about me, I was born in 1989. I was 3rd in line in my family. I'm the 3rd born, and I was born with a blocked tear duct. That's a true fact about me. And I could not cry for the first few weeks of my life. I couldn't produce tears. And I always tell people now that that was the earliest indication that I was not going to be a liberal. It's true.
And in many ways, Trump and Brexit represent the latest fight against tyranny. Tyranny is always subtle. It comes in obvious forms like communism and Nazism, but it also comes in subtle forms like dictatorship by unaccountable, unelected international officials who have no accountability to you or I. And that's a hugely worrying thing. And that's exactly what the European Union has become in Europe. And people will say the same things that they say in America about Trump. They'll say it's racist and it's misogynistic and it's a worrying thing for the state of the nation. But actually, that's just part of the liberal spin that so much of the world is buying right now. Actually, what Brexit is all about is about restoring choices and sovereignty to the individuals of the United Kingdom versus the European Union, which is so undemocratic that if it was its own country, it wouldn't be allowed into the European Union. That's how undemocratic it is.
Mom, Dad, I'm a lesbian. I like girls. Oh, sweetheart. We always knew. The bottom line, we just want our children to be happy, and we love you regardless. Brave soul. Oh, thank you guys. Oh, also, I think I might be a conservative. I don't understand. I can't breathe. Hey, get that camera out of my wife's face. Get out of my face. Guys, it's totally fine. It's okay. I just, think a little more conservatively. But sweetheart, you're black. Yeah. Look, it was a crazy election cycle, a lot of emotions. We're going to get you somebody to talk to, and you're going to work through this entire mess. No, Dad, this is who I am. Well, what about Beyonce? Yeah, what about Beyonce? You like Beyonce, you love Beyonce. Beyonce is a liberal. What's going on? I still do. It's just as a general rule, I don't think the Billboard 100 should dictate my political alignments. And what about all of our Spanish-speaking friends? I knew there were too many Caucasian people in this neighborhood. Oh, that's good, honey. Make me the bad guy, Mrs. I can't live without those hedges. Well, we're gonna need those hedges when the neighbors find out that our daughter is in the KKK. What? Guys, this is getting completely out of hand. Mom, I'm still black, and I still like Hispanic people. I simply think that we should maybe put the economical future of this country ahead of the social issues. That is all. Sweetie, can you please just be gay?
Liberalism is a cancer because it destroys lives. When you accept yourself and see yourself as a victim, like my granddaddy always says, if you believe you can't, you won't. It's that easy. A society now that wants to turn everybody into victims is a society that is telling and convincing people they can't before they even try. It's a society that is making people see themselves as the little man and not letting them know that in America, it's always been this. If you work hard, if you stay out of trouble, if you stop making excuses, this country will reward you. What was happening between me and that teacher me and that professor, is the difference between liberalism and conservatism. You see, liberals, when they have a problem, they look out externally. They say, who can I blame? If I'm short, it's because of tall people. If I'm poor, it's because of rich people, right? This is the way they think. But conservatives, we do something weird, totally weird and foreign, right? We look inward. We look internally. We say, I have a problem, and now I need to fix it.
Claim to care about your community. You cannot care about your community when it is convenient for you because the narrative fits, and you've now found a reason for you to be outraged and for you to be enraged because the facts are not on your side. If you are really committed to Black growth and Black community, we can isolate things and we can say, you know, both of these things are horrific. But if your bottom line is that you care about preserving Black lives, we need to address Black on Black crime first and foremost. And rioting in the streets or protesting in the streets only when Black people are killed by white Americans, which is something that happens hardly ever. Just looking at the actual empirical data, to me represents emotional fraudulence.
Marriage is a partnership, and I mean, we've just started on this journey together, and it's an incredible relationship. And the strongest example of marriage that the world has ever seen and that the whole universe has ever seen is Christ loving the church. And if Christ loved the church like a husband should love his wife, as Paul writes in Ephesians, then the sacrifice that Christ made for his bride was to lay down his life for the eternal wealth of the soul and for eternal salvation. So moving countries really isn't too much of a sacrifice compared to that.
It happens more often to white people and to Hispanic people by rape, but we don't know any of their names. And I think that that's incredible. Think about the fact that you can name so many Black Americans who were killed at the hands of police officers off the top of your head, right? Trayvon Martin, Ahmaud Arbery, I guess you could count just because of he was a former police officer if you wanted to. And you can go on and on and on. Philando Castile. You can't do the same thing if somebody asks you to name white men that were killed by police officers or Hispanic men that were killed by police officers, because the media doesn't care about those stories because they don't feed into the leftist media beast. And it's sad that people can't pick up on that people don't see that Black America hasn't figured out that what they're really doing is setting us up for failure, right? There is no other community, even when horrific things happen, right? That do the amount of protesting and screaming and getting ourselves arrested and yelling and hollering that Black America does. Let me give you an example. So recently, this year, there's been a major increase in Black Americans murdering Jewish Americans, especially in the cities. It's been a major issue. You guys might recall the rabbi who was stabbed in the head. He was actually at a service, and a Black man who was disturbed came in and stabbed and killed him. He just stabbed him in the head. You maybe recall rabbis getting together and holding a vigil for this death. You do not recall any boycotting, protesting, any Jewish Black Panthers, if they exist, marching through the streets demanding justice. You do not recall that back-to-back madness and that coverage. Why is that? Why is it only Black America does that? Hispanic Americans, if they die, and the killing is unjust, why do you not see that portrayed in the media or see Hispanic Americans gathering and doing that thing? What is it about Black Americans that we do that? If you're going to say it's our history in this country, there's been tons of discrimination in this country. None of us have lived through it. So please don't give me the BS and
Jesse Jackson led a group of protesters in Stanford, and they said, hey ho, Western Civ has got to go. and they referred to this course as racist, right? It's wrong to be celebrating Western civilization. This was sort of the beginning of teaching people, indoctrinating children and students to believe that there's something inherently wrong with being American. How weird. How weird that I can go onto a college campus today and students can break out and start chanting USA, USA, and other students will say that that chant is racist.
Who made you think that not speaking proper English was how we communicate with one another? Even that, all of that started in the late 1960s, again, with the Black Militancy Act, with people changing their names back to their African names, developing their own slang and their own talk. I was studying David Hume. You guys don't know him. He's, one of the greatest Scottish writers, philosophers. And David Hume, Scottish people were severely behind the English people, just in terms of everything. And David Hume inspired and uplifted and challenged the Scottish people by saying, if we want to get ahead, we have to learn English. So he turned around to the Scottish tribes and said, we need to learn English. We need to master the English language. And they did that. And in a matter of years, matter of decades, the Scottish people passed the English people in engineering and in the sciences, and it's because they challenged themselves to be better, not to be worse. They didn't pretend that somehow having a broken language, having broken down families was a symbol of who we are, and that is so unique to Black America. I won't subscribe to it. If that people say that's how you have to be Black. That's how you have to be Black. Listen to your psychological conditioning. If to be Black, you can't speak in proper English, or you're acting white, right? So first and foremost, I want to talk about the concept of white supremacy, because that is something that we see so much across the media today, across the mainstream media narrative, is this idea of white supremacy. If you are a minority in this country and you believe that every single thing in your life that you don't have, that you do have, that you will have in the future is because of white people, you are a person that believes in white supremacy. You have to believe in Black inferiority. You have to believe in minority inferiority, to ascribe every single thing that goes on to your life to just white people. If it wasn't for the white man, I wouldn't have this. If it wasn't for white people, this wouldn't be going on. All of that is a concept of white supremacy.
In California, 70% of Black boys cannot pass a basic literacy exam, okay? You're talking to me about white supremacy? My fear is liberal supremacy, because anywhere, show me any place where liberal policies reign supreme, and I will show you a place where the inner cities and the communities are broken, where the families are broken, and where people are feeling hopeless.
All of this stuff about pretending, oh, it's, slavery and the Jim Crow laws and all of this stuff, because the truth is people that lived through that didn't act like this. They didn't. The rioting started after the Civil Rights Bill of 1964. The riots that happened across the cities started happening after we actually gained our freedom in a legislative piece. When Jim Crow laws were put to an end is when Black people started rioting, right? So why is it that free Black people in this country are more riotous and more angry, right, than the Black people that were actually living under systemic oppressions? I can't understand that. I can't wrap my head around it. Why do we need to pretend that we are living in the 1850s? And why is that somehow a token of our Blackness, right? The angrier you are shows that you're Black. No, it doesn't.
Is it plausible that racism is now being used as a theme to turn Black people into single-issue voters? Is it plausible that sexism is now being used as a theme to turn women into single-issue voters? And of course, the answer was yes. So I had the idea, I said, now that I know this information, I began reading and just reading and listening to voices that I had never listened to before. Dr. Thomas Sowell, Dr. Ben Carson, Dr. Condoleezza Rice, heroes in the Black community, and so disrespected. I started reading their books and I suddenly felt like I was awake, like I had been sleeping my entire life, like I had been lied to.
how can we get the single parent household number down? 77% is horrible. That's a great question, Darren. Yes, it is abhorrent. And by the way, I talk about that in my book, because if you want to know the biggest indicator of whether or not you are going to be wealthy or impoverished, you need but look in the household. Your chances of breaking out of poverty if you are a single parent is atrocious versus just having a two-parent home. Making sure you get married before you have kids is a big thing that can correct the course that you're on. But the only way we're going to be able to do this is through education. And I'm a big believer that our education system is no longer educating. We are simply creating more and more people that are reliant upon a government. And we know that there is an agenda to expand government programming. And until there is an awakening in the Black community, until Black America becomes educated, until we are no longer scared. And what I mean by scared is what I said, is that freedom can be very scary. It can be a burden because you go, oh my gosh, suddenly I'm responsible for me. And I've got to do the work. I've got to read the books. I've got to compete with these guys next to me. This guy might be smarter than me at this. This guy might be smarter than me, but the only person that's responsible for that is me. Until Black America does that and properly learns our history and takes the time to do that, as I've done, I'm never not reading. Right now I'm reading, here we are, another Thomas Sowell book. I love him, Economic Facts and Fallacies. I consider myself to be, a forever student. And I think that it is the only way that we can start to see those numbers go down, is for Black Americans to be more educated.
The Charlottesville debacle happened, and that was unbelievable because I came home and my cousin was watching CNN, and I was just picking it up in the background, and CNN, if you were watching it, they were trying to convince me as a Black American that the KKK was now alive and well because Donald J. Trump got elected, right? Like, we told you this would happen, and now it's here. They're back, right? People are riding in horses, and this is it. And I got so angry, and I started ranting for 4 minutes on my computer. And I'll tell you where this anger came from. The worst thing that the left does is that they cheapen evil. They cheapen real evil, right? And I was angry because when they started talking and trying to say that the Ku Klux Klan was alive and well, they were cheapening the real experiences that my ancestors lived through. They were cheapening it. And when I say my ancestors, I don't mean long dead ancestors. I mean my grandfather, who's still breathing, who grew up with the real Ku Klux Klan in a segregated South. They cheapened that experience. And these stories were so real to me growing up. To have my grandfather around the dinner table explain to us that he grew up with the real Ku Klux Klan, that when he was a kid, they would come by his home and they would spray bullets. And what's remarkable about that is that my grandfather, when he tells that story, he doesn't tell it like a victim. He tells it with a sense of power. He says, and my daddy would grab the shotgun and shoot back at them boys. That strength, that power, never a victim, segregated South. I've never heard my grandfather ever, growing up in his home, ever utter a bad word about a white person, ever. He would just say it was a different time. And he worked his entire life. His first job in a segregated South when he was 5 years old, laying out tobacco to dry, picking cotton on a sharecropping farm. This was what my grandfather had to do, right? This was his day in and day out. And now I look around and I see all these little victims who wouldn't know a hard day of work if it jumped up and punched them in the face. Most of you, know my grandfather. I know in California, you probably saw him sitting behind me when a certain loser named Ted Lieu, right, decided to play a tape when I was sitting in a House Judiciary Committee. My grandfather is easily the closest person to me. I love him so much. And I feel that everything that he lived through was to give me this experience to go through life, not as a victim, but as a part of this society. And to know that, after raising his kids in the North, my grandfather returned back to the South with my grandmother to retire. And he purchased the sharecropping farm that he grew up on. He was able to live that life because he made good decisions. That was it. not because he cried, not because he protested when something bad happened, not because he was shrieking in the streets, not because he was demanding handouts. He was able to do that because of the American dream, and because that is what is on the line. That's what I fight to protect, right? That's why I launched Blexit, the Blexit organization, the black exit from this liberal ideology, which has become a cancer. It is a cancer.